Spurs just made their first big free agent signing of 2026, and that is Tobias Harris, and I am pretty happy with this move. This fills in a big spot that the Spurs needed at the power forward position, and it's a 2-year, $31 million contract. It's not someone like John Collins, who I was personally hoping for, but I think it's better than what we're saying is a Rui Hachimura. The Spurs used all of the non-taxpayer MLE to get him, so they're probably not going to be doing much more spending the rest of this offseason. But Tobias Harris seemingly fits like a glove on this Spurs team, and I am so happy that the Spurs were able to bring this guy in on such a cheap deal. They've been wanting to do 2-year contracts, and I'll get more into that why in a second, but he's more than just a three-point shooter. This isn't someone who just stands in the corner and shoots threes, and that's it. That's all he does, like, per se, a Rui Hachimura. This is someone who's a big physical scorer at 6'8", 226 pounds, can take the ball down low and get buckets with his back to the basket, and that's someone the Spurs needed. Someone who could shoot those little turnaround fadeaways from the mid-range, and the Spurs didn't have any of those guys, and they really haven't had one since Rudy Gay or LaMarcus Aldridge. I didn't have Tobias Harris on my 4 players the Spurs should sign video, and to be honest, I probably should have because of what he brings to this Spurs team and how well he can fit. But he's a winning role player. He impacts winning. He did it with the Sixers. He did it with the Pistons. He's done that his whole career. But what are the Spurs gonna do with Tobias Harris? Well, let's find out. As I mentioned, they're on that 2-year contract, and the reason why is because Stephon Castle is due for an extension in a few years. Victor Wembanyama can get an extension right now, and Dylan Harper is going to be due for an extension in 3 years. A lot of the money that the Spurs have is going to go to those 3 guys, and deservingly so. And so the Spurs are not trying to have any other sort of long-term commitments, any bit sort of big, hefty checks to spend outside of their main core. And that's why the Spurs signed him to a cheap 2-year deal. And they're, like I mentioned earlier, they are getting a guy who just fits very seamlessly on this roster. They're getting more consistency from 3-point distance. They're getting a reliable veteran shooter who can help calm the storm when things aren't going their way. They're getting some reliable depth. And that's one of the big things that the Spurs needed, was some depth. Last season, he averaged 13.3 points, 5.1 rebounds, and 2.5 assists on 46.9% shooting and 37% from 3 on 3.5 attempts from 3 per night. I would like to see that come up a little bit more, probably around that 4.5 to 5 range. I think that would be ideal, and we'll explain more why I think he should be taking a few more threes. And like I talked about, how he's a physical scorer with his back to the basket, and the Spurs needed that. He shoots 38.1% on catch-and-shoot threes. He is unafraid to shoot the ball in late clock situations. Tobias Harris is just some sort of a calm and collected presence on the floor, and the Spurs could have used a calm and collected presence during the NBA Finals when they were blowing leads. I'm not saying Tobias Harris would have won this team a championship, but I don't think the Spurs get, gentlemen swept. Maybe they win the series, but they certainly wouldn't have been gentlemen swept. He had that 30-point performance in Game 7 in the first round versus Orlando, had a good playoffs. Even though he shot 30% from 3, he averaged his second most points for the Pistons with 18.2. He's kind of quietly underrated as an attacker. This is a nice first step that gets past defenders. And I mentioned back to the basket for the 3rd time now, but physicality. It goes into that and just what Tobias Harris is as a player. A physical scorer. And his size is a big reason why he's also pretty physically defensively. Not the greatest defender in the world, but the Spurs need that. The Spurs need the P word. Physical. Someone who can match up with bigger power forwards. Because guess what? Julian Champagnie didn't do that. He simply didn't. And the Spurs don't really have anyone who can. Sure, you have Carter Bryant, who's going to be an amazing defender in some time down the road. But I just don't think that Carter Bryant is going to take this world-changing step next season. I think Carter Bryant is going to take a pretty significant leap, but he's not going to instantly pan out as the power forward of the future. And the Spurs knew that when they drafted Carter Bryant. But in my opinion, this is just a home run signing for the San Antonio Spurs. People think Tobias Harris and think he's a bad player because of the slander that he got in Philadelphia. Obviously, Philly fans were slandering Tobias Harris. But you know why people tried to slander him was because he's making a lot of money. He was making so much money than what he's really worth, and shout out to his agents for getting him almost $400 million. This is someone who the Spurs needed badly. Now, how does he fit into the roster? Yes, I mentioned depth. The Spurs needed more depth. They need more shooters. And that was a big problem during the finals because a lot of their bench disappeared. Keldon Johnson was really struggling. Luke Kornet was really struggling. The only guy off the bench who was playing well was Dylan Harper, and Carter Bryant was getting minutes during that series. So guess what? Now you have more power forward depth. Whether Tobias Harris comes off the bench or he starts, which I'll get into that in a second, you have more depth. Don't forget, the Spurs also added 2 power forward center type players in the draft in Jaden Quaintance and Terrace Reed Jr. Tobias Harris is more of a consistent shooter than Keldon Johnson. Tobias Harris is not a one-dimensional player because I love Keldon Johnson, but he's a terrible defender. And if he's not attacking the basket with success, then he's not impacting winning. And everyone saw that during the playoffs. He can help mentor Carter Bryant a little bit. And I talked about what's going to happen there because guess what? Now, Tobias Harris, and they also re-signed Harrison Barnes. That was something that I thought of like, ooh, is Carter Bryant going to lose minutes? No. Carter Bryant's not going to lose minutes because I think Harrison Barnes is going to be sort of in that Bismack Biyombo role where he's not really playing every game. Probably not playing a majority of the games, and if he is, he's getting the garbage time minutes because Harrison Barnes is a culture guy. That's the reason why they re-signed him. Someone who understands the vibes of the locker room. It's his 3rd year with the Spurs. He understands what it's like. They need players who have won championships and understand what it takes to win a championship, and Harrison Barnes did that. I know it was in 2015, but he has that on his resume. I really think Carter Bryant is poised for a big role next season, regardless of the fact that they've now signed 2 forwards. And don't forget, Keldon Johnson's on the team. Julian Champagnie's on the team. I don't think Carter Bryant's going to lose minutes. I think he's more of a 3 than a 4. I'm not a head coach, though, and I never will be, so we'll see. He is a project player, and he took some big steps during the final months of the regular season and the playoffs, but the Spurs knew they were getting a project player. He's just not there yet, and that is okay. So what are the Spurs going to actually do with Tobias Harris? Are they going to start him? Or are they going to bring him off the bench? That's a great question, because if you do start him, who are you moving to the bench? And I think the one clear answer is Julian Champagnie. Because you're not going to bench De'Aaron Fox. I know people want to. You're not going to bench Stephon Castle or Devin Vassell. Those 2 dudes proved that they are starter caliber players in the NBA. The odd man out is Julian Champagnie, and it's hard to justify benching your best 3-point shooter. He shot 38% from 3 last season on 6.2 attempts. Without question, was the best shooter on the team. He's a good rebounder, a good defender. Like, Julian Champagnie did a lot of things to become more than just a catch-and-shoot guy, a very valuable role player on a good contract, and he was a big reason why the Spurs were in the finals. But when you look between the two, between Champagnie and Harris, the one thing that Harris brings more of that Champagnie doesn't is size, and that's what the Spurs need. Size next to Victor Wembanyama, and Tobias Harris can also stretch the floor the same way. So that's why I think Harris should be a starter, because you're going to put more size and physicality on the floor at the same time as Wemby, and then Champagnie comes off the bench. I think it could look like a starting lineup of Fox, Castle, Vassell, Harris, Wemby. Then off the bench, you got Harper, Keldon, Julian, Carter Bryant, Jaden Quaintance when he gets healthy, Terrace Reed Jr., and Luke Kornet. That bench is so much deeper than it was during the NBA Finals. So much deeper. And people could say, oh, let's start Dylan Harper and bench De'Aaron Fox. But I think regardless of what happens, Dylan Harper is going to be playing 30 minutes a game next season. Do I think they can do the 3 guards next to Harris and Victor? Yes, but I don't think they will, because now they don't have a lot of cap space to sign another guard. So it sounds like Dylan Harper will probably be off the bench for one more season. But I think it'll be at a much larger capacity in around 30-plus minutes a game. Tobias could come off the bench, but I just don't see that happening because they need a real power forward in the starting lineup. Like I said, Julian Champagnie, I love him. He is a great player, but he is not a power forward. He's a small forward, and that's why I think moving him to the bench actually benefits him, because he's going to get more favorable matchups. He's not going to be guarding dudes who are 6'9", 6'11". He's not going to be guarding starting caliber power forwards. And I just think it makes more sense to bring Julian Champagnie off the bench than it does Tobias Harris. But what do I know? I'm not an NBA head coach, and I never will be. The Spurs probably won't be making any more moves. Like I said, they used the full non-taxpayer mid-level exception on Harris of $15 million. They still have that biannual exception of $5.5 million, and they're not going after LeBron James anymore when I wanted them to. But overall, I'm very happy with the signing of Tobias Harris, a real power forward who does a lot of things that the Spurs are asking. What would you guys grade the Tobias Harris signing? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know any other players you want the Spurs to go after during this free agency. Until next time, this is Ty Talk Sports signing off. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all next time.